Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Tonight we're joined by Bartłomiej, a foreign and security policy expert from the Puławski Foundation, to examine the dramatic stakes in Poland's presidential runoff, as US Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem controversially endorses a conservative Karol Nawrocki over centrist Rafał Trzaskowski. Accusations of foreign interference, media manipulation and electoral bias dominate the headlines. With Poland's future direction and its critical ties to the US and EU on the line, Mr. Kot helps us to unpack what's at stake for democracy and security. Bartłomiej, welcome and thanks for taking the time. Good to see you again.
Good afternoon. Lovely to be here.
Thank you. Before we kick off, a short video I want us to watch, okay? So let's have a look at that.
I just had the opportunity to meet with Karol, and listen, he needs to be the next president of Poland. Do you understand me? It matters who's in charge. I have watched over the years as socialists and people that are just like this mayor out of Warsaw, that is an absolute train wreck of a leader, have destroyed our countries because they have led by fear. They have used fear to control people, and they've used fear to promote an agenda that is not what liberty is about.
Fairly strong words there, Bartłomiej. What's your first reaction?
Well, certainly these are strong words, and they only prove one point that I very often make, that the Trump administration, many of its activities also related to the alliances, it is not purely transactional, in my opinion. It is also very ideological. And there is a sense of the wind of change that blows not only across the US, but also in Europe. So a lot of the elections that are taking place currently in Europe, that was also the case in Romania. Of course, they also spark some interest in the US, and there are some ideological traits and some ideological links between what happened with the Trump's second presidency, the election, the MAGA movement, and of course the European Union trends. Ms. Noem very directly supported one of the candidates, which is not very often done by the foreign politicians, especially the ones that are holding the public office. But this is also something which, in my opinion, is very much tied to the, as I said, ideological traits that are found in a similar way, both across the supporters of Nawrocki and the supporters of MAGA movement in the US.
Tell me, though, I mean, Trump first round, if you like, in 2016 to 2020, there wasn't so much involvement or engagement, so far as certainly as I can remember, in European politics. What's different this time, do you think?
The stakes are different, in my opinion. Also, how the perception of Trump himself and how he perceives actually European Union, and why certain things were not achieved by him during the first presidency. In my opinion, he believes that the mistakes also of the Biden presidency, the mistakes of the foreign policy of the US of the recent years, were extremely tied to the lack of proper decision-making from the European Union side. There is way more willingness right now also to compete on trade issues between US and Europe. So it is all very much entangled in the, I would say, the perception of the Union as the actor that is not active in the geopolitical way, and therefore actually puts a lot of burden on American interests, and on American interests not only in terms of trade, but also in terms of foreign policy. In Trump's eyes, the fact that the US has to be involved in Ukraine against Russia, has to support Ukraine against Russia, it is a failure of the European policy. This is why so much things and so much engagement comes from the US. And I suppose that Mr. Trump doesn't like it, because he would prefer to have an open way for trade deals also with Russia. Currently, he's very much entangled in the European interests that are also present in Ukraine.
Right, so he wants to disentangle himself from the Russia-Ukraine issue and sees it as...
But also from the European politics.
And he sees it as a European issue more than... Now, tell me, how does that play in terms of, the Polish reaction? And I'm talking specifically about what Kristi Noem said, and which implied that if Nawrocki wins, then Poland is guaranteed a good military relationship with the US. Where does that... I mean, it's a fairly sensitive balance, isn't it, right now?
Look, this is the narrative of the campaign time. I'm fairly certain that Trump administration understands the transactional aspect in the relationship between Poland and the US as well. It understands how much Poland is necessary for the advancement of American interests also within the European Union, how much Poland is important for American security interests on the eastern flank of NATO, and how much profitable it is actually to have a proper relationship with the Polish government, whoever governs in Poland, also because of some long-term business deals that are, for example, connected to the nuclear power.
Right.
And from that very perspective, even if the president who might be elected as a person who is more ideologically closer to Trump administration, there will always be, at least for some time, a government that would not necessarily be ideologically aligned with Mr. Trump. And that, in my opinion, would not prevent the American administration to have proper ties with Poland, because it is in the interest of the US. And I suppose that no one else understands the priority of American interests than Mr. Trump himself.
Right, so basically you're saying business as usual, irrespective of who wins the presidency. OK, I want to zoom out now and talk about the impact of this election with regards to the relationship between Poland and the European Union. What are the changes, if any, that you might see if Nawrocki wins?
Well, in my opinion, that will be a huge difference, certainly. The competences of Polish president are also very limited. We shall actually bear that in mind. So if Mr. Trzaskowski becomes a president, he will be a person from the same political party, while the government has a very strong view on foreign policy. It has also a minister for foreign affairs that is very active, and that also has quite an impact on European policies. In that regard, in my opinion, Trzaskowski will not be a president who will be, his first thing to do will be things connected to foreign policy, maybe apart from signing the nominations for ambassadors. Whereas in Nawrocki's case, that might be very different because of the competences of the president in this country that are very much focused on foreign policy and security policy to some extent, the ones that are connected to armed forces. So he will be trying to find divisive lines between himself, his presidency, and the government that will be in cohabitation.
What does that mean, divisive lines?
That means that certainly the perspective on the EU policies would be absolutely different between the possible future President Nawrocki and the government, and that in order to have these divisive lines, to play the divisive politics, because that's the nature of the game, if you have the president and the government from different political parties, he would certainly use that as a matter for political narrative internally in Poland. The EU would become the polarizing issue internally in Poland, especially given the fact that also during the campaign, during the debates, it was mentioned merely in the polarizing aspects such as Green Deal issues or, well, to some extent, how much negative impact being more correlated with the EU policies might have on the proper partnership with the US.
What about the attitude towards the war in Ukraine and the support that Poland has been giving from the start? Do you expect that to change if Nawrocki were to take the presidency?
That is an interesting question in itself, because it is very much also connected to the beliefs that Poles share, the society shares. The polling changes on these issues, in my opinion. Of course, we are still very much committed to the shared interest that we have with Ukraine, which is certainly the security of Europe against the Russian aggressive policies. But there is less and less support, certainly, for the fact that this war is continued right now. It is continuous. It has lack of a proper end game, and certainly there are also divisive policies that are related to the migrants, to the Ukrainians who are present in Poland. But this is also the case that was raised by many political parties. If the case is that the future president will be trying to reach out to the electorate of Confederation, as one of the far-right political parties in Poland, certainly his points of view on Ukraine will have to also reflect that. But as I said, there is a difference, and I shall actually underline that. There is a difference between the security policy of Poland against a possible Russian threat and a policy on Ukraine, because these two sometimes would not necessarily go in line.
When you say Ukraine, you mean migration from Ukraine, or do you mean the provision of weaponry and logistics?
I would be more precise. Ukraine's membership in NATO, for example.
Okay.
Nawrocki was quite vocal in actually signing the document that was given to him by Mr. Menton, where he directly signed to the idea that not necessarily he would support Ukrainian bid to become a NATO member. The question is to what extent that reflects the narrative of political campaign, to what extent it is rather actually a stamp on perspective on reality, knowing that US doesn't support that, Germany doesn't support that to some extent, etc., so he can afford stating that publicly, and to what extent that is a result of proper strategic thinking about the security of Poland and of Ukraine. But the perspective on Russia, on Nawrocki's side, is a bit different, knowing that he himself sometimes shows off with the fact that he was sanctioned by a Russian regime. So it is a very nuanced thing to say. But certainly, as compared to Trzaskowski is openly supportive of Ukraine bid to become NATO member, etc., etc.
Right. So quite a complex picture you've painted for our audience. Thank you for that. We'll wait and see what happens on the 1st of June. Thank you for coming in, as always, Bartłomiej. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, though. Lots more coming up. Goodbye.